This is J. Thomas Allison. I am the writer and narrator of a different kind of audiobook. It's called A Steamboat World. And this happens to be the first chapter, The World of the Steamboat. So welcome to an innovative kind of audiobook, one that seamlessly blends audio storytelling with a visual element. As you listen to the tale of a young boy on the verge of adulthood in Albany, New York, around the year 1855, you will also witness a vivid depiction of daily life from that era unfold before your eyes. Though our world today differs greatly from that of Jeremiah Austin III, better known as JJ here, and separated by more than a century and a half, his experiences still offer valuable lessons that remain relevant for achieving a successful life today. JJ's story is rooted in a time that began 50 years earlier when his father, known here also as the Captain, and his grandfather, known as Granddad, transported freight along the river using sloops. By 1855, the age had shifted dramatically with the advent of the steam power. For JJ, this era would ultimately conclude in 1874, when the arrival of noisy steam engines running on iron rails replaced the vessels whose engines once resonated with a deep, throaty whoosh. It was found in the veins of ordinary people with extraordinary vision. It was the genius of a clockmaker's apprentice, Robert Fulton. And the boat, built for the 1909 celebration, was a replica of the original 1807. Its engine was built by the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute students. For nearly a century and a half, the Hudson River held a promise that seems improbable today. The ability to travel its length not by the muscle of oars or the patience of sails, but by the bold thwish of the steam engine beneath your feet. There was a time when the Hudson was so alive with steamboats, people joked you could walk across the river on their decks if you timed your steps just right. It was an age of innovation, spectacle, and human endeavor, when progress was measured not only in speed, but in the stories that lingered behind every whistle blast and turn of the paddle wheel. In the early days, travel on the Hudson was a trial of endurance. Before the rise of steam, you were just waiting for that, weren't you, Thomas? Before the rise of steam, a journey from New York City to Albany, some 150 miles upstream, could take 4, 5, maybe 6 days, depending on whether you came by stagecoach, staying overnight in a hostelry along the way, sometimes sharing your bed with fellow travelers, or aboard one of the sloops that went from one to the other. Those that traveled by sloops braved unpredictable winds and currents, also the river's moods, which were changing with its tides. The arrival of the steamboat changed everything. Suddenly, a day and a half was all it took. And as technology improved, that time dwindled, a day and a night, then a daylight only, or overnight. Finally, a mere 6 hours, just enough time to savor a lavish dinner or breakfast, indulge in conversation, or sit hypnotized by the moving scenery from your wicker deck chair. Those chairs were introduced to people for the first time aboard the steamboats of the 1850s. And don't forget, there were floating palaces. Steamboats were more than just transportation. They became floating palaces, buoyant hotels where men could enjoy a shower bath and ladies in the thinnest of cotton gowns, perched aboard, of course, could sit in fours and be lowered into warm, bubbling waters. The air filled with perfume and surrounded by the most exotic flowers, all crafted, of course, in crisp silk. Travelers slept in tightly arranged bunks, so narrow and stacked they were compared to nesting boxes for chickens. But the discomfort was softened by the promise of sumptuous meals, though your bedbug companions might want to keep you awake. The breakfast tables groaned with bounty. Dinners were orchestrated affairs, and the rhythm of the river seemed to lull passengers into a sense of timeless adventure. To ride the Hudson River steamer was to be swept up in a pageant of commerce and leisure. Massive side-wheelers became icons of the river. Their names were whispered in awe. There was Constitution and United States, early sister boats that proclaimed our patriotism as a new nation. Then they took the place of the first boats that you could ride up the river overnight, Hope and Perseverance. There were 2 or 3 that were called the Albany, and 2 or 3 that were called the Hendrick Hudson, reminding us of the history of the man who found us. There was Washington Irving, the author, who had a boat named for him, and another one was Rip Van Winkle, Sunnyside, and Knickerbocker, reminding us of the author on the river and the lore he included in his many books. Today, the era of the steamboat lives on in faded photographs and yellowed newsprint. The launch of a new boat was a citywide event, both here in Albany and New York City, documented with bold, breathless excitement. Each one was the largest steamer to ever ply these waters. Accounts also detail their catastrophes, from fires and collisions and explosions to racing contests that sent waves crashing on the riverbanks. To truly remember this age, one must dig deep into the archives, where there we unearth the stories of heroism, captains who braved fog and ice on the river, of engineers who coaxed miracles from their machines, or, if you're lucky, you might have a grandparent willing to recount tales firsthand of when they rode the river. And those are becoming fewer and fewer, of course. Perhaps while you were apprentice on their vessel, you might have learned the river's secrets bathed in their glow, the glow of a whale oil lamp. Steamboat races were legendary, drawing crowds along the river, not to mention the passengers on the boat, whose testosterone rising and cheering their chosen vessel. Rivalries were, of course, between the companies and between the captains who would push their engines to the limits, smoke billowing and boilers rumbling with barely contained fury. Occasionally, these contests ended in disaster, the river claiming her due and boats vanishing in the mist of memory. Sometimes you paid for your ticket with your life. Collisions were not uncommon. The Hudson's traffic was dense, and a misplaced signal or an impatient pilot could spell catastrophe. Newspapers relished these dramas, their headlines filled with tales of the daring rescues and tragic losses. Yet, for every disaster, there were countless ordinary journeys, like today in an airplane. Families reuniting, business conducted, love stories began under moonlight decks. The steamboat was a crucible of human experience, forging memories that will linger long after the last paddle wheel ceased its turning. Here we end part 1.